Good morning. How's it going, everybody? So excited to be here with you. I woke up this morning to something like 200 people registered for this training. I had a little bit of a panic attack. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I'm gonna give it like 1 minute and then we're gonna get started. Thank you. Thank you, Tijen, for saying that. I've been like, welcome to my living room where I've been like segregated for the last week, which as some of you know, it's really hard for the extroverts. Good morning, Camille. So I've been, I'm gonna try to keep myself just not distracted, but I think we're all on. I'm gonna put my phone on silent. Hi, Karen. Hi, Rubina. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in forever. Hi, Najma. I love that name, so beautiful. Najma. Where's my sister, Vanessa? Vanessa. So, okay, I'm gonna ignore me for a minute. Talk amongst yourselves. Oh, I said it correctly. Awesome. I love it when I get people's names correctly because, you know, my first name is Christiani. And at first look, it looks like Christine. And for a long time, people called me Christine. And no offense to all the Christines out there in the world, I really dislike to be called Christine. So I shorten it to Chris. But sometimes I'll go to the bank or somewhere official where they look at my driver's license and they're like, Christiani. And I'm like, yeah, good job. So that always makes me excited. Always makes me excited when I get things corrected. So I have a lot of chats. So hi, Chris. This is administrator. I don't know who you are. Administrator, you have to identify yourself. But hello. Okay, lots of really cool people here. I'm excited about this. Okay, so a couple of logistics about this. There are a couple of things on the bottom. One is, you already figured out, is the chat. Oh, hi, Betty. The chat, which you can send it directly to people, or you can send it, yes, I am recording this, Pam. You can send it directly to people, or you can send it to me. I'm gonna try to do my best to manage all of the multiple things. And there's also a Q&A on the bottom. That only comes to me. So if you ask something over there, I'm probably going to save the Q&A questions for the end. So if you have something that's like really pressing, it's probably better to ask in the chat, and I'll just try to manage the two of them at the same time. Otherwise, I don't know that I can pay attention to all of this. I do a pretty good job at, like, you know, managing multiple systems, but who knows how this is going to go. I am going to, I did create like notes that I don't necessarily want to share with you people because I didn't proofread them. So I'm going to try to use them as well. Let's see if I can get myself set up over here, so I can see the chat. Make this smaller. Okie dokie. All right, so test this. That's off. All right, woo, we're here. I'll be recording. Let's see, raised hands. See that, where are the raised hands? Okay, I don't know where the raised hands are. I see that you have my notes there. Let's see if I can see this. Oh, I see it's under participants. Okay. Okay, if you raise your hand, you're actually going to have to, like, we're not seeing all participants right now. It's you actually can't see all the participants. If you click on the participants, there's a tab and then you can see all of the people that are in this call. So we promise to maintain anonymity and confidentiality and be kind to each other. Just so you know, a lot of the people that are coming to this class are just really a lot of Organizing Maniacs clients or people that have been in touch with us. We're not really, and my Facebook friends that I invited on Wednesday. So I feel like I'm hanging out with people that I know and love, and that have a love for, you know, organizing. I hope that answered your question. Okay, so I think we should get started. I have a lot of slides, and I just wanted to make sure that I cover as much as I can. So I'm so extremely grateful to be spending this lovely Friday with you. So a couple of, you know, I've been spending a lot of time indoors by myself, and I do a lot of thinking in the middle of the night when I can't sleep and when I'm taking a shower. I don't know about you, it's like the most distract-free time that I have in my life. And I was thinking, like, gosh, I have so much content that I create over the years to like teach classes and just, you know, things that I start and never finish because I think, oh, this would be a really good idea to do. So I'm thinking about bringing some of this stuff back, and depending on for how long we're all stuck indoors, I'm just gonna plan on Fridays coming and hanging out with you guys and just sharing my knowledge. I've organized a lot around the house, and now I'm like, I can't organize anymore. So, don't think I have the participant button. Oh, okay. If you don't have the participant button, that's a good sign. Then you can probably not see everybody that's in the call. Thank you, Jim. So here we are. You know, this is one of my most favorite trainings. I developed a whole class around it, which is my Detox Your File Box program, which I hope that you won't judge me, but I am going to make an offer for you guys at the end of this training. If you want to know more, if you didn't get enough information, and you want to, you know, more explanation about how to go about creating a filing system, I'm going to make you an offer to take on that class, you know, your spare time. I'm going to make it the cheapest I have ever made. I do a Black Friday special for $97 every year. So that's what I'm going to offer you the class for if you're interested in, you know, learning more and doing more and actually in-depth creating a filing system. I'm hoping that when I'm going to give you enough content that when you leave here, you can go and, you know, at least manage like 80% of your paperwork. A lot of you already have long-term filing systems anyways. So some of you that have already worked with me on paperwork may not learn a whole lot, but this may be a refresher for you. So I hope everybody can leave here learning something they didn't already know, which is always good when you're coming to a training seminar. I'm going to try to keep this to like an hour and 15, but it might take an hour and a half. I'm going to record it, so if you didn't get to see the whole thing, you can come back and learn more. There were a couple of hundred people registered for this class, and just before I logged in, I realized that only maybe about 100 of us could be here. So if you're watching this recording and you didn't get into the class, my apologies. I didn't realize the kind of a response I was going to get for this training. Normally, you know, when I do these trainings, I get like 60, 70 people register, and maybe like 25 people show up, and then we have a good time. It's pretty intimate, but I realize that we all have a lot of free time in our homes right now, and paperwork is a really big problem. A lot of people have that. So, so ultimately, I hope that, you know, all of you are staying home and healthy, and everyone that you love and care for is in good health. I've been saying a lot of prayers. My parents are in Connecticut. I have a lot of friends in New York, and I've been sending prayers to them pretty much every day. You know, we all know someone that might be impacted by the coronavirus, and these are very scary times. And I don't want to minimize that by like throwing this training and selling you stuff. I realize that the world is in chaos, but my brain always operates better under chaos and action. And I honestly, I run a small business. I don't really know how to behave right now. It's like I was text messaging with a friend this morning, and her and I were in Texas about 4 weeks ago, where I taught another class at a conference. And literally 4 weeks ago, I was running along the river, enjoying a beautiful sunrise in Houston, where the world seemed to be perfect. And today, here we are. So So it's really, really crazy. So anyway, so my promise is always that I believe that we can all be organized. We do specialize in working with clients that have brain-based challenges. So for the last 12 years, I've been teaching people whose brain wiring are not meant to be default in an organized manner to be more organized. And I always love when I spend a lot of time with people and over time they develop better organizing systems. So over the years, that's basically what this filing system has become. It's like, I don't like filing, my clients don't like filing, and to be honest, I don't think anybody likes to file. So I have like morphed this into like something that it feels really easy to manage. And funny enough, I did break the rules and I've been working with some clients. And last week I saw my client Debbie, and she's been my client for 5 years. And one of the first things she said to me when I walked in the door, she's like, I'm so glad I have a good filing system because my paperwork is not everywhere, right? So this is basically the system that I created for her 5 years ago. I'm going to talk a little bit about like the reasons why we don't get organized. I'm going to give you some mistakes that I see that people do all the time that in itself may solve any of the paperwork issue that you may have around your house. And then I'm going to give you some steps to manage your paperwork. And then we'll just see how it goes. So I'm not going to talk about housekeeping. It's like we're stuck in our homes and you're going to probably be distracted. Try to minimize that. I assume most of you know who I am. I'm Chris Skra. I started Organizing Maniacs in 2007 in the middle of the last, economic crash we had when the real estate market crashed. I used to be a project manager for a local remodeling contractor, and I kind of stumbled upon organizing while I was freelancing some of my work, and one thing led into another, and I started working with clients that had brain-based challenges. And last week I was talking on the difference between hoarding and chronic disorganization, which is a presentation that I do. I have spoken on that like across the country to different places. So it is my passion to help people be more organized, especially when brain wiring is does not facilitate organization. But the truth about paperwork is that an average American receives about 14 pieces of paper, 14 pieces of mail, junk mail bills every single day. And most of that paperwork is completely useless to us, right? I just literally read my mail yesterday, and I hadn't read it in an entire week because I just feel like I didn't want to go outside. I don't know why I feel like I don't want to go outside, but that was just, the majority of it was just completely useless. And one thing I notice about a lot of my clients is like, instead of dealing with that paperwork every day, we just shove it in, plastic bags and drawers. It's in our basements, it's in our garages, it's in boxes, it's pretty much everywhere we turn, there's paperwork. And I also hear from a lot of clients always saying like, why can't I find my kids' permission slips? Or not that long ago, I worked with a client and she was completely mortified that she had taken her kid to one of the school events, and her child couldn't go because she had never returned the permission slip to go. And the kid cried and she was embarrassed, and they wouldn't make an exception because they had allotted certain space for some of the kids to go. And the one thing she said to me is like, why can't I just have a place to put my paperwork? Why can't I have a place where I go and find that paperwork later? And that is not a complaint that is very unique. I hear that from a lot of people. Not that long ago, I worked with clients trying to get their taxes together. And he's like, why is that it takes me like 2 months to prepare for my taxes every year? Why don't I just have a place where that stuff goes? So the point of having a filing system is so those things don't happen to you. It's not to burden you with, filing, because nobody likes filing, but it is so when you need something that you have a safe place to go and find those things. Okay, so I would like to challenge you to imagine a time where you could find paperwork that was easier. where it wasn't laying around all of your house. And most of the time when I ask people that question, they say to me, they were like, well, it was probably before I had a house or an apartment or children or a husband or a job. Like those were the times when we like had very little paper. And as we can all imagine, if we think back to like when we were, as our lives changes, paperwork also gets more complicated. And it's not uncommon that, that I see my clients that are actually, oh, can you actually even hear me? Because I'm supposed to be using this thing. How's that now? It's probably significantly improved the sound. I can hear you, okay. There was a time when our lives were pretty simpler. And then as we add people into our lives, of course, our paperwork gets more and more confused. And the point of this is to make it so the paperwork always becomes simpler, even as you add people, because paperwork doesn't go anywhere. To me, it feels like it multiplies, and it's never where I think it is. I can hear you good. Either headphones are off. Oh, that's good. Okay, I'm going to keep the headphones on. So I always hear from clients too when people say like, I really hate that I can't find anything. And then sometimes I have to go on these binge organizings. And I used to call them like Saturday binges because, we all wake up on a Saturday and we're like, oh my God, what happened to my home, right? And then we just start like recklessly going through the place and like figuring out what to do with things. And then because we don't know what to do with them, and we just shove them into like a bin or a box or a bag or whatever, and we just shove it in the first drawer or the first place that we can find. And that's what happens to our paperwork. I used to work with a client. She used to call herself the bag lady because that's basically how she managed her paperwork. She just stuck it in bags, and you could see the layers of like dates from her paperwork just based on how the bags was. So, I always pull up from the bottom because that was the oldest stuff and then get rid of it. I love Marie Kondo, and, I know a lot of organizers have like different opinions on her. I know like everybody read her book, but she said there is a difference between cleaning and organizing. And in cleaning, we're confronting nature, where in organizing, we're confronting ourselves. Claudia said she loves her. And I totally agree with that statement. That was like one of the most powerful things I learned from her book, was that like in cleaning, we are just kind of like managing dust and whatnot. But in organizing, we have to truly understand how is that our brain works and how do we go to find stuff. Let's see, I'm gonna skip around some of this stuff. So fun fact, in 1975, Business Week said that today we would be a paperless society. And the truth is that 45 years later, we probably have more paper than we have ever before, even though we're still constantly striving to go paperless. In the next wave of problems, what I see a lot now is like people are going to have tremendous amounts of electronic clutter that they have no idea what it is and how to deal with it. So like, we're not going to address this in this class, and maybe one of the Fun Friday things that we do. But like, everybody's storing everything electronically and we have no idea how to find anything. So Karen agrees with me. And currently, right, we're all working from home, which is even worse because now we're printing our home stuff and we're printing our work stuff. And that stuff is like commingling everywhere. And when you already don't have a good filing system, we can only imagine what our lives going to be like 10 weeks or 12 weeks from now, when we actually get to like go back to some sort of normal life that we used to have as far as our paperwork is concerned. Before all of this, statistics show that 23% of adults pay their bills late because they couldn't find their bills. I mean, that happens to me sometimes too. I estimate that we get an average of 90,000 pieces of mail in our lifetime, and about a third of that is completely useless. About a third of it is like newspapers, magazines, and catalogs, which is also completely useless. And only about 1/3 of it is actually like useful bills and statements, which in our actuality is a whole lot of it is useless to us in long term as well. No, I'm hoarding my slides to myself, Marietta. I might be giving them to you later. 90,000 emails. Yeah. So we're also getting just as much like electronic junk mail. I always cringe when I see some of my friends' inbox and it'll say like, 10,000 emails. Once again, this class is not about email or electronic junk, but there is so much more going out into the world. I think that we're converging a little bit into this like, false sense of belief that we're managing our paperwork better just to have a lot more electronic junk that is just really going to come to a halt. I only have like 200 emails in my inbox, and that really drives me crazy. Oh, mental junk. I love that. That's great terminology to use. Mental junk. Where newspapers? Yeah, newspapers are just, I have tried to avoid receiving newspapers into my home, but there's probably about four local newspapers that just come whether you want to or not. You can't cancel it. They're mostly like advertising things, so they just keep coming. And then it's like, if you're not very good at recycling these things right away, which some people are not, then that starts to pile up as well. So thanks for the feedback, everybody. One of my favorite books, which is The ADD Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life by Judith Kohlberg and Kathleen Nadeau. She says that we receive more mail in 1 month than our parents received in 1 year. And that's just not that far removed, right? And we received more mail in 1 year, our generation today, than our grandparents received in a lifetime. That is significant that we got that much more mail that they ever did. I don't know about you, but I get super excited when I get a card from somebody in the mail. I'm like, oh my God, somebody actually wrote to me, because that is such a rarity, right? Yeah. I feel like we received less mail and more email than ever before. I agree with that, Marietta. I think that, but I still receive a lot of things in the mail every single day. However, I'm also not one of those people that believe in signing up for everything to be electronic. I still get all of my bills in the regular mail because I believe that if I was to mess up on something really badly, at least I would see like, the colored pink envelope that says like, hey, your electricity is about to shut off. Where if I was to receive that electronically, I may miss it. And then, what happens to my electricity? So I still get all my paperwork. Karen said, haha. It is funny. So based on that, like, people normally say like, oh, I can see why my house is overrun by paperwork, because yeah, if you're receiving 90,000 pieces of paper in in like an average person's lifetime, and sometimes you work with clients that have all of those pieces of paper in their home, they never get rid of. One of the things that I see a lot is that people just don't know what to do with their paperwork, right? I feel like that is like the biggest mistake I see people do, is like they don't know what to do with it, so therefore they keep everything and they keep it forever. I worked with a client a few years ago, and they were trying to move, and their entire basement was just filled with filing cabinets, and I'm like, what are you keeping? And she's like, I don't know, everything that came, we just thought it might be useful, we just kept it. And as I started sorting through that, she had bills that went back to like the 1960s. She had her Home Depot. It wasn't Home Depot, it was like different hardware stores, but there were receipts for all kinds of things when they first had gotten married and moved into the house, and everything had been kept. And I said, like, did you not know to get rid of it? She's like, I didn't know. She's like, I thought I was going to sell the house, and do I keep those receipts for like basis of the house? And like, as I talked to her about it, I was like, you know what, that makes sense. Like, if you don't really get in depth into what your paperwork really means, you might as well just keep everything at all. And people have fear. There's a lot of fear out there about getting rid of paperwork, and what if I need it? How do I find it? So I see a lot of that. A lot of solicitations from credit cards and company banks. Yes, those are, there are quite a bit of those that come in the mail. I normally, you say you trash it, I normally shred those. I mean, those things are real checks. So I don't know that you should just be throwing them in the trash. If somebody finds them, they might be able to use them. So one of the reasons, so one of the things that I normally spend a lot of time talking to my clients about when I start working them with paper, and that is a question that I'm going to pose to you as you venture into your office and you start figuring out what is it, the paperwork that you have, is like, why are you keeping this paperwork? Like, what is the long-term value of the paperwork to you? Like, does it go with your taxes? Is it something that goes with your permanent stuff? Does it go with your home? Does it go with your kids? Does it go with your car? Is it something professional? Like, why are you keeping this piece of paper? And I think when we start analyzing what is happening to that piece of paper, you probably come up with an answer that will be helpful, and it'll help you guide you down the, you know, the decision-making tree of that piece of paper. So one particular category that I find is very confusing for people when making decisions about what to keep and what to get rid of is medical. And medical, I split into two categories. I split it into medical records and permanent records. And I also split it into medical receipts. And if you are a person that doesn't have a whole lot of medical expenses every year, and I think the government, you know, that number changes a couple of times, but I think like in the last couple of years, the last time I checked, you had to have more than $10,000. No, you had to have more than 10% expenses from your income. So let's say you made $100,000. In order to qualify for a tax deduction, you had to have more than 10,000 out-of-pocket expenses to qualify for a tax deduction on your expenses. So if you're a person that have really good health insurance and you don't have a lot of medical expenses, you may not need all your medical receipts, and those could just go, you know, be stored somewhere else. They don't have to go with your medical records, which to me would be like your blood tests, or, you know, if you had any surgery, or if you had any evaluations, or, you know, if you broke something and there are like x-rays, like those things to me would be like a permanent part of your body. You should keep that with your medical records. But every receipt that you receive is not that important, you know. Not that long ago, I went to the minute clinic at CVS, which I find the easiest place to go if you're like just need a quick checkup. And they give you like their printout, it's 14 pages long just to say like, yep, in fact, you don't have the flu, or yes, in fact, you do have a headache. So, or yes, in fact, you know, you have a sinus infection, or whatever it is that they're giving you. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that. And if you're a person that goes too many times or go a lot of times, like these things can get really fat and really comprehensive, and you may not be needing to keep that. So in that situation, and I will ask people like, why are you keeping this piece of paper, right? And sometimes I get answers like, you know, I keep track of when I go see Dr. Smith by having the receipt. And I always say, are there other ways you can keep track of when you went to Dr. Smith? Like, could you create like literally a one blank piece of paper, stick it to the front of the folder and say, you know, Dr. Smith 4/3/2020, right? And then you can keep track of that way, instead of the, you know, like CVS clinic 4/3/2020, instead of keeping the 14 pieces of paper that said that I went to the CVS clinic. Those are just some questions that I ask people to keep track of. Well, the Canadians are just celebrating the fact they have really good health care and they don't need to keep track of any of this stuff. We celebrate you too. So medical records is just one of those categories that are like iffy. But if you start evaluating some of the things that you have in your home, there may be other things that are like, you know, those things that are complicated and not quite as like clear cut on what to do with it. Your car may be one of them. Like some people like to keep all of their oil changes and all of their, you know, like in the state of Virginia, you have to get your car inspected, and then you have to get it, then you have to have emissions, and then you have to have like, you know, then you, I don't know, we have like three different stickers, and you have to have a register, And like, you may be one of those people that want to keep all of that paperwork, but the question is like, is that paperwork really valuable to you long-term? No. Is that paperwork really valuable to the next person that buys your car? No. If you get into a car accident and you have the door replaced, or if you have some, you know, some part of the car remodeled or repaired, whatever, is that information, you know, valuable to the next person? Maybe, right? So then you have to streamline, how much paperwork are you keeping? How about using your calendar? That's what Jen just said. How about using your calendar to keep track of when you went to see Dr. Smith? I think that's a good idea too. So, so that is one mistake, not knowing what to do with paperwork, and therefore just keeping everything all together forever, right? So I gave you a couple of examples of reasons why you don't need to keep everything forever. Another mistake I see people making when creating filing systems is having really complicated filing systems. And I worked with a client a few years ago, and I created a filing system for her that had almost 300 files. And mind you, that these are normal, average people with a normal, average life. The only thing special about them is that they had a couple of real estate properties that they were renting out. But she wanted everything minutely organized, you know, like there was a file for her American Express and his American Express, and then the combined American Express. And then there was a file for their Verizon phone and their internet, and like everything had to be completely separate. And I said, you know, it's absolutely fine that you want this, and I will give you whatever you want. I just want to make sure that you understand this is going to be a lot of maintenance. It's going to take a lot of time for you to file every single week. Lo and behold, we create this very complicated filing system. And then she became my regular client, and I just sent somebody there every couple of months to file her paperwork. And that was fine. You know, I don't mind. She didn't care. She had the resources and she was willing to pay for it. But I kept saying to her, like every year I would call her and be like, hey, do you want a less complicated filing system? She's like, no, I like my filing system. And I'm like, okay. So you can have a super complicated filing system if you want. Just understand that then it's going to be really complicated to maintain. I never advocate for those filing systems, ever, ever, ever. I talk people out of them all the time because I feel like commingling is your best friend, right? The more you can combine things together, the more you can mix categories, or like, you know, one category that I see a lot is like health. You know, people will have like yoga, and they will have, they will have like health articles. They will have like, you know, stretching exercises. They will have like, sometimes they will even have like, you know, research on supplements, and, you know, you kind of get the picture of it, right? And instead of having a folder for every single one of those categories, I tell people like, just commingle all of them into health. And yes, worst case scenario, you want to go find something, you may have to look through 20, 30 pieces of paper, but that's okay, because you don't have to file those pieces of paper in like 5 or 6 different folders, which is very unlikely to happen. And that's the stuff I see sitting on people's desk, right? If I have a folder that just says health, I stick it in there. Whenever I need to find something, I'll poke through it and then I find it. Otherwise, it'll just kind of linger around waiting for it to go into the very specific folder that it was meant to be. Oh, Marietta loves my approach. I think you're my best friend, aren't you? So creating really complicated filing systems is like the other big mistake I see people doing. See, so I say recently, but it's been like a few years because I've been telling this story for a while. I worked with a client and she had 5 different folders for the same paperwork, which was her car, right? She had one for like maintenance. She had one for like official paperwork for the car. And then she had one for like, then she had 2 folders that were just named differently. One was her Jetta, and one was a Volkswagen. And so it was just like a lot of different files for the same thing. When we combined it all together, it was a tiny folder, super easy to use. And she was like, oh my God, I never thought about making this so much simpler for myself. And now I know exactly what I'm looking for. So So my lesson for you here is like, go through your filing system and eliminate as much as you possibly can. Like if you feel comfortable just combining things. And normally when I'm working with clients and they were like, oh, I don't know about combining, commingling, that feels really awful. I was like, no, just to start off with, just put them on the floor and then stack them together, right? You're probably gonna have a stack of like utilities and credit card and financial statements, and you're probably gonna have a stack of like medical health related stuff, and you're gonna have like probably a stack of like professional things, right? So just kind of stack them together just to get a feel for what some of those categories could look like. And then you can go back and be like, okay, you know, I feel like I could combine some of these things together into like, take two and combine into one, or, you know, I can go into threes and combine into one. And like whatever your comfort level is, just start like seeing what you can eliminate. Let's see. Oh, Marietta is saying you could also apply the same concept into your computer. And the answer is yes. So normally when I work with people, I always start, like they always call for their paperwork. So I kind of create a filing system that's simplified that way. And then we also mirror that into their electronic files. Because I find that if your brain only has one thing to remember, it's much more likely to comply automatically than if you have like two different systems. So work here first, and if you don't have a paper problem, then you could just apply all of the things we're talking about to your electronic files. So I should get a drink. So the third thing that I noticed that people do a lot that is also very detrimental to their filing system is they'll put their filing systems on places that are really hard to get to. Excuse me. I have a client, she's still my client. And the first time she called me, I walked in and I was like, why are you calling me? Like, your house is just beautiful. Everything was perfect. I felt like I was in a, you know, Architectural Digest catalog. And then I walked around the kitchen and there was like this paper explosion that just came through. And I was like, oh, I see why you're calling. And basically, as I started talking to her, I was like, you know, very first question I asked people, like, where do you file? And she's like, well, my filing cabinet is like upstairs in that corner of the house. And I was like, well, that is your problem. I didn't even have to go see where the filing system was. It was like, this is where you manage paperwork and that's where you file. Like, doesn't go together, right? You have to bring that into here for it to work. So we literally had to like empty out one of her kitchen cabinets, completely empty out, just because of the amount of paperwork that she was filing in the area, and sacrifice all of the pots and pans into a different part of the house that she wasn't using nearly as much. It wasn't pots and pans. They were more like serving trays and like, you know, entertaining stuff that she only used once in a while when they were having parties. And I was like, this cabinet becomes your filing cabinet. And so by changing that one aspect of her filing system, she immediately improved in the paper explosion that was happening in her kitchen. So I always ask people, like, can you sacrifice some space in your kitchen? Like, I literally, you know, you can't see my kitchen, but I walk in through the front door and I have a counter. Maybe before we go, I'll show it to you. I have a counter, a very, very large counter, and that's where I process my paperwork. So every day I basically read through my mail. I shouldn't say every day. I should say like the one or twice a week that I go to the mailbox, I process my paperwork. And then I distribute what needs to go into the recycling bin, which is literally 2 steps away from where I process my paperwork. And then I go around the corner and I go into this show and tell, this lovely bin, which is where I create my filing system. This is like 80% of the paperwork that I have, which I'm going to tell you exactly how to create one for yourself. But it's around the corner, and super simply for me to file. And then I go over there, I lift the lid, I stick my paperwork in there, and then I'm good to go, right? And then I end up with maybe like 1 or 2 pieces of paper. There are actual things that I have to do. They're like bills that need to be paid or things that I need to action on. Have another Zoom meeting with some agents. Oh, that would be fun. have to leave. Okay, well, bye, Jim. Thanks for joining us. So another mistake that I see people doing is like not just having their filing systems really far away, but then piling all kinds of junk in front of their filing cabinet. So if you don't have access to your filing cabinet, or if you make it really difficult to get to this stuff, you're not going to file. It's not very encouraging when the drawers don't open, or the drawers fall out, or the drawers have too much stuff in them. So try to make some of the place where you're putting your paperwork easily accessible, easy to find, pleasant to get to. So that way, when your brain is thinking like, I'm in a file right now, it's not thinking like, oh, I have to move 12 things before I can get to it. So, so normally when I help people create filing systems, I basically create a 3-part series filing systems for people. And I just like categorizing it in my brain that way because it makes it really easy for me to identify. One category, which is the major category that most of us have, is all of the temporary paperwork we have. And those are like, I call them papers that have 0 long-term value to us. We're going to keep it because we don't know if we need it right now, or if we're going to need it next week, or if we're going to need it next month. But in the long-term life of a paper, it's just really something that, like, somebody sends you an invoice that says, you owe me money. And then you say, okay, thank you so much for telling me. Then you write a check, or you send it electronically, or whatever it is that you do, and you pay the bill, and you say, thank you so much for, letting me know that I owed you money. You pay the bill. And now this piece of paper is completely worthless to you. But most of us can't let go of this piece of paper. We're like, but I may need it. There are phone numbers in it. There are account numbers in it. There are all kinds of things that are valuable that I may need to find in a certain amount of time. So I want to keep it. That's 80% of the paperwork. They're lingering in all of our, not all of our desks, but all of your desks. And they're like all over the place, and they're piling up in all kinds of areas around your home. And that's like the majority of the problems we have. If we could just deal with that. And so today I'm going to give you solutions to deal with that, with the 80% of the paperwork that you just have lingering around your desk in your office and whatnot. And then there's a permanent process to that. So there's like, there's your house and your car and your children and your husbands and, your professional life. And, some people may have more, some people may have less, but those are all of the things. They're a little bit more long-term that you may need to have. And then there are taxes, because the government demands us to keep paperwork just in case. So that's part of it. So the first part of creating any filing systems that I challenge people on is like, what is the point of your filing system? What do you really need? And why are you keeping this paperwork? If I don't say this enough in this training, is like, just think, why are you keeping this piece of paper? What is the relevancy to you, your life, and your family? This does not include your business. Like, if you have a business, it needs to have its own separate filing system, which has its own separate guidelines. It has own timeline. Like, if you own a business, basically everything that you generate needs to be kept for 7 years. So and if you own a business like I do, I completely have a separate section of my home that is like just to manage my business paperwork. It has, once again, its own retention guideline. So step number 2, I always tell people, like, do you have products? Do you need products? Do you are the products that you're using, working for you? At the very bare minimum, you should have 1 or 2 filing drawers. And I basically have 2 filing drawers. One is upstairs, which is with all my long-term, long-term permanent stuff. It has my car, my house, some of my professional stuff, my medical. And then I have this drawer down here, which manages all of my temporary paperwork. And that's about, and then I have a couple of boxes. One has manuals, and one has my original house purchasing and the couple of refinancing paperwork that I have that I streamlined. But I also keep things like I replaced the windows, I replaced the HVAC, I have a patio in the back. So those are long-term things that go with the house. I have them in the same box with the paperwork because I figure one day, well, if I decide to sell this house, a lot of those things would go with the next homeowner, and that would be valuable for them to have. I always recommend everybody have a label maker. That's a duh. It's really helpful. It's really easy to help you create filing systems when adding files to your filing system when you have them. It's the easiest way to just print a file name, just stick it and put it in a tab and then attach it, and then you're good to go. It's not anything really exciting. What about paperwork from volunteer organizations? So thanks for that question, Pam. So those paperworks also could have its own folder, right? Depending on how much paperwork you're generating, you will need a couple of folders in a section by itself of your filing system. But to me, it's also a little bit temporary because you're not gonna, unless it's an organization that you started, which then would qualify under the business section. It's something that you're just going to be doing for a little while, and at some point that's going to disappear. So hopefully that answers your questions. I've seen people have remember the client in the basement full of cabinets. Not necessary. I mean, I think the most paperwork that my clients end up with is 4 drawers worth of paper. If you're keeping more paperwork than that, you're probably overkeeping. I do have a client that I have worked with. He has 2 filing cabinets just of manuals and directions how to use things, but he has an extensive wood shop with a lot of tools. So it makes sense that you would have, that many manuals, and he likes keeping them very organized and hands-on, and, but that's to me, that is a unique separate filing system just for that. So people always ask me okay, I have the supplies. I'm asking myself the questions, why am I keeping them? But where do I get started? Where do I even untangle this ball of mess of paperwork in my office and in my house? And I tell people just pick a pile anywhere. It doesn't matter what it is. Just pick a pile and then just start analyzing the piece of paper and figuring out what it is. And then as you start sorting your paperwork, just start thinking in categories, right? Is this something that goes with my family or my house or my car? Is this something more permanent that I need to keep? Or is this something that is in the 80% category of all the things that I should just pitch it in the next, very soon near future, that is temporary piece of paper because it's a bill, a statement, credit card, something that has no long-term value to me? Or is this related to my taxes? So you're going to create 3 piles and you're going to start sorting and establishing where does this paperwork go with. I used to pay bills late too, mostly because I kept putting off writing the checks. Now I have set up each company into the bill from the debit on my checking account. They do that. The due date. It's a pleasure. The only thing to be aware of is to have enough funds, to cover that. And since my credit card is paid in full every month. Yeah, so thank you, Ginny, for saying that. I also do that. I pay a lot of my stuff on automatic bill pay from my bill payment on in my checking account. Yes, you do have to make sure you have enough funds there. Also, one other option that I also use is I'm on a budget plan with the electric bill and with the gas. So every month, basically, I pay the exact same amount. So you can set those bills up as a revolving payment. And then literally when I get the bill, I just take a quick peek to be yeah, I'm still within my budget. I don't owe any less, or I don't get to skip a payment. And then I can just file that away in my monthly filing system that I'm going to show you how to do in a minute. So pick a pile, any pile, start sorting 3 categories. People sometimes ask me do I start from my desk? And I was no, don't start from your desk. Start from the oldest place where you can. So if you are my client that call herself a bag lady, we went into that closet and started pulling from the bottom. And then it was easier to make decisions about what to keep, what to get rid of. We established good retention guidelines about how long we were going to keep that stuff. And then we were able to decide what to do with that paperwork. I normally remind my clients to be ruthless, but not reckless. So evaluate every piece of paper. Sometimes I work with people and they get exhausted and overwhelmed. And then before you know it, they are just throwing everything away. That's not a good thing either, right? Because if you're just recklessly throwing everything away, at some point you may need some of that stuff. And I've worked with people and they'll be like, that stack has nothing important. And then I'll look through it and invariably I'll find things like their marriage certificate or letters from their family or even their passport. So that's not very useful to just throw that stuff away. We talked about commingling. So one thing that I am going to give you when I send you the recording of this class is I'm going to give you my record retention guideline, which I think is the best tool I have. I feel like if one day I die, I want it to say, created the best record retention guideline ever. Because I feel like over I've been doing this for almost 13 years now. In the beginning, I would ask accountants, it was like, how long people should keep this? How long people should keep that? And every single answer I got from people was different. And so over the years, I have created a guideline that it's cautious. It's not, it doesn't encourage people to just purge things recklessly, but it's also a way to just kind of like normalize it to say like, okay, this is the guideline for like your business stuff. Like I always recommend people to keep their tax returns for 7 years, whether you own a business or not. And that covers a lot of the nuances of the tax code. So yes, you do have to keep a little bit more paperwork in the short term, but in the long term, if there's like different variances that you haven't qualified for, then you at least have some of the paperwork in there. And does it take that much space? A lot of the times it doesn't. Like my business takes about 1 bin per year, which is a lot of paperwork, right? So I have like 7 bins worth of paperwork, but it's also not an astronomical amount like my client in the basin was, 15 or 20 filing cabinets. So I'm going to give you that tool. It's going to help you as you go back and try to work through some of the stuff, because you're going to have questions about like, well, I have this piece of paper. What do I do with it? And in that list, there I think it's like 7 pages worth of like any paperwork you can ever think of. It's listed in there and how long we would recommend you to keep it. So normally whenever I work with people, we spend a lot of time talking about record retention guidelines, which we don't have that kind of time here, which is one of the things that if you decide to purchase my class, I do spend a lot of time talking about record retention guidelines and pieces of paper and what to do with all that stuff. And understanding like what to keep, what not to keep. Like, if you have been audited, your retention guideline would be different. If you're suing somebody medically, your retention guideline for that would be different. If you have a lot of medical expenses, your retention guideline would that, be different. So there's a lot of different things that could be happening to you. And we all have to understand our own story, because that also goes with how long we keep paperwork. Okay. See, what do I have here? So the sorting process is really the part that takes the longest whenever you're working with paperwork, right? And that is like one major part of why you have all this paperwork everywhere. And then part number 2 is also is like figuring out where that stuff is going to go and how to get some of that stuff out. I'm sorry, I'm getting a whole bunch of questions. Let me just read some of these. Love seeing you guys too. Can you say something about magazines? I'll go back to magazines in a minute. Yeah, Camille says sorting takes forever, and it does take forever. There's a huge part, especially when you don't have a filing system, especially when you're going through this process. So so just to recap some of the stuff that we have talked about, like 1 is like establishing guidelines about how long your paperwork you need to keep, like where are you going to start sorting and where you're going to store it. when you start sorting, establish 3 guidelines or 3 piles, right? One is like temporary, don't really need a long term. One is permanent. I need this for a long time. Think like cars and houses and children and your personal stuff. And then there are the taxes. This is the thing that substantiate my tax returns. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what to do with the 80% of paperwork that you have in your home, which I said is the stuff that is completely, you know, I think is completely useless to us. That is just that is my opinion of the process. And then there's going to be the 15% that is permanent that goes with your home that we're not going to talk about today. And then there's the 5% of your paperwork that goes with your taxes, and we're also not going to talk about that today. But I figure if I helped you with the 80% of your paperwork in this moment, that may be helpful for you to just go and start actioning some of the stuff like right immediately. So my tip for you today, which is kind of like why you came to this call, is basically create a filing system that is like 12 tabs. And here's I'm going to try to do my very best to show and tell this. Because I know how people like your visuals out there. So this is basically what it looks like. So it's like January, February, March, April, May, June, and so forth. So there are 12 tabs in here. And basically you can create this as you start filing, because this will also help you manage, you know, your 80% paperwork that you're going to be sorting through your home. My personal guideline is to keep this paperwork for 12 months. And what I do is, you know, every month, when you're creating a new filing system, you basically would be filing back to like April of 2019. Anything before April of 2019 at this point would be useless to you because it's more than a year old. So I basically would go back into like, see, did I purge April of last year? I have not purged April of last year yet. So basically, this is my stack of papers from April of 2019. And every other day when I read the mail, or every day when I got the mail, I read through it and then I stuck it in here. And it includes things like utility bills and credit card bills and my mortgage statement and all of my consumable receipts, like grocery store receipts and things like mail order delivery. And I refinanced and they sent me a letter about that paperwork, which I definitely don't need it anymore. It includes my homeowners association bill. It includes insurance paperwork. So you kind of get the idea, right? All of these things were things that I owed money for. They sent me a statement. I paid those bills, and then I was like, well, I can't get rid of this yet. So I basically took the entire thing and I stuck it in the month of April, right? So this year, when April comes around, I pull out this file. I just looked through it as I was talking to you guys. And in fact, I have zero need for any of these things. So I basically take it, the entire thing, and I put it in the shredder. So the filing system is basically, I call it like 1 minute filing, right? Because like I'm reading my mail and sticking it in there. And whenever I'm pulling it out, I'm taking the whole thing and just sticking it in the shredder. And that's the extent of that process. And every month, the system encourages you to file some paper and also to purge some paper, which would avoid you from having a situation like we all have, which is like lots of filing systems with things like our American Express and our Verizon bills. They're just kind of there permanently, and that at some point we have to go back and purge. So remember that client that I said that had like 300 files? Well, every year we also had to go in there and like pull all of the stuff out that needed to be archived. So in addition to spending time filing in, we had to spend time filing out. Honestly, a lot of useless work because you don't have to do that. So the main question I get from people 100% of the time is like, oh my God, I have to commingle all of this stuff. Yes, you do. Because I want you to really think about what is the long-term value of these pieces of paper in your life. It's really very small, right? And sometimes when I go through the file and I'm looking through it, I'm like, I should have kept this. And then I just pull it out and I put it where it belongs. And then I'm like, I kept this thing, you know, I don't know. I think a couple of, in the fall, I had a bill from the plumber and I was like, oh, I should keep this out. And honestly, it's because I was like, I never want to use that plumber again. So I want to take note of who he was, because the whole process was a complete debacle and I never want to forget not to use the person. But sometimes there's like, oh, I loved this person. Or I was visiting my sister not that long ago and I bought some incense at a natural store, and they actually wrote what the incense was on my receipt. And I was like, oh, I want to buy some more of those. So I pulled that out and then I went to find the incense that I had. But it's very rare, right? And whenever I want those things, I also know where they are, because I can just go back and be like, okay, that was a receipt. It's in my monthly file. I can go back, pick it up and find it. Commingling becomes your best friend in this situation. And I understand it's the most appalling thing. Most of my clients freak out when I say that. When I say commingle, most 100% of people just have an adverse reaction to it. And I think it's because we have been ingrained to believe that commingling our paperwork is bad. For some reason, they're going to get lost, and some reason you're never going to find anything. But the truth is that that is not the truth at all. The truth is that by commingling your useless paperwork, you will find it much easier, you will file it much easier, and you'll purge it much easier. So let's see. How about memorabilia like birthday cards? Okay. I have a separate system for that because those are meaningful things to me. I have a whole other class about memorabilia, and I think not next Friday, I think the Friday after I'm going to do like a brief over that. So maybe you can come back and we can talk about memorabilia in that call, because I think there's a whole lot that goes with it, and there's a lot of different things you can do with it. So I'm going to skip that question. Marie says, I'm going through a divorce and holding on to a lot of paperwork as proof of help fighting me against financial abuse. Okay. So you have a perfect example, Marie, of like how it is important to know your story and understand the value of your paperwork, because in your situation, paperwork does have a long-term value and you needed to keep it. And I have helped clients get divorced that I have helped create this filing system. And the thing is that it actually was really helpful in creating budgets and creating proof of like monthly expenses, because we had 12 months of all of her expenses, including all of her receipts, all of her credit card statements, all of her utilities, all of the things that she was spending money on were really helpful to do that. I also help people create budgets. And normally I help them create this filing system, which is really helpful for them. And then I take 3 months worth of their expenses, and then I help them analyze where they're spending money, where can they cut back. And, you know, as we all know, like these are the times to really look at our budgets and figure out how can we cut back on things that we no longer want or need. As I went through like a couple of weeks ago, looking through my own expenses, there were a lot of these revolving little charges that I had that I was like, well, these things tend to add up to a lot. So this tends to be really helpful into doing that. So I agree with that. Lynn says, keep everything that your attorney encourages you to keep. I totally agree with that. And then she says, when your divorce is complete, you can purge it in a year, which is a good advice. I would keep it longer than a year. I would keep it until your divorce is completely signed and official, and then I would probably keep it a year from that. Okay, so I probably have identified in my record retention guideline about 30 categories of paperwork that you can stick it into your monthly file. Once again, I'm going to give you that. And this is a take on a very beautiful, but a bit complicated filing system out in the marketplace that's called Freedom Filer that my colleagues have created. You know, if you like complicated and you want the 300 file system, they are the best system that I have experienced out there. It's very pretty. It's very color coded. It's, you know, it's got all the tabs you ever need or want. But this is my take on their beautiful system to just simplify it for the people that don't like filing. So we talked about that. We talked about purging. I'm gonna have a drink first. What is? Okay. I worked with a client not that long ago, and she said, well, why can't I just throw all that stuff in a box? And I was like, you can, right? This is a formalized, prettier, more organized version of just throwing all of the stuff in a box. If you like to throw it in a box, you can. If you want to make it a little bit more organized and easier to purge, you can. I have a friend, he chronologically sticks it from the top. It's like it's not even a pretty box. It's just a shoe box, right? And then he says, I purge from the bottom every 6 months and once again, go through the paperwork and throw it all away. There is no good method to this madness. The point is to have a system and do the best system that works for you. I think that like between have a super complicated system and having a box, this has been the most compromisable way for me to just suggest my clients to have a system. And so that's what I'm doing. So just to recap, like what was in the 7 steps that we came here to talk about. One is think about your paperwork and what are you doing with it? Why are you keeping it? How are you naming it? How, can you commingle some of these things and just have lesser categories instead of being minutely detailed? How do you sort and how do you get started? Commingling is your friend, so create a monthly filing system that you can just commingle a lot of the stuff. Be ruthless and not reckless on your purging. The monthly is just the easiest way that I have found to store this stuff. And where are you going to locate the files after you're completely done creating this filing system? So the next thing I want to just talk to you briefly about is the class that I offer people to, how to go in depth into creating a filing system. And I won't take a ton of your time. I'll just make it brief. It is basically, so over the years, people would ask me for, like, can you help me organize my paperwork? And then they'd be like, I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough resources, or I can't work with you in the middle of the day. Can you just give me some tips? It's like, as you can tell, like just giving people some tips on how to organizing their paperwork can be really difficult. Some people are just, I believe that some people are just really good at like hearing a couple of tips and then going and like immediately implementing it, and then just like getting it 80% ready. And then the other 20% doesn't matter to them. And then they just move on with life. And there are some of us, I'm one of those people, I always need more information. Like, tell me the exact how to create this thing. And then I will go and follow the exact directions you gave me. And then therefore I will have the whatever thing I need to get done. So this class is a result of that, is a result of my brain just creating like a streamlined system that is step-by-step on how you would go about managing all your paperwork. And basically I called it, with the help of one of my team member, Patty, like we call it detox your file box, which is basically eliminate as much as you can. And then we go into detail how we do that. We're selling, that is mostly an online class. So there's a series of 4 videos that were pre-recorded. I have 3 different classes in there. So, the videos are a little different depending on which mood I'm in, but they're the exact same content. There are lots of Q&As in there about things that people that have taken this class in the past have asked, which I think are extremely valuable. It is at your own pace, so you can do it in the middle of the night or in the middle of the morning or in the middle of the afternoon, whatever works for you. The videos are on average about an hour long. I am going to offer some office hours in the next 8 weeks for the class. So if you were to purchase this class, you will have some support around it if you have questions. And it basically covers a lot of the same things we talked about, but it talks about, it extensively talks about the record retention guideline, which I think is the most important part about understanding how to keep your paperwork and how long to keep it. We do go into a few other things about like a little bit into like memorabilia and all of the non-paperwork in your office, you know, like electronics and, manuals and real estate paperwork. We talk about maintenance because you can create the most beautiful filing system in the world, but if you don't maintain it, it's absolutely completely useless to you. So I am just basically selling this at the exact same pricing that I would sell it in my Black Friday event. So if you go to the website, if you go to our website, which is organizingmaniacs.com, we have a button there that says buy now. And if you look down, it says detox your file box, and you can sign up for it. And then it will take you through a processing order page. And if you use the discount code, which I have to look it up to make sure I don't give you the wrong one. Sorry, technical issues now. What is the discount code is FFT, which is Free Friday Training 2020. So FFT 2020, you can purchase that for $97, and you can get started on your own filing system immediately. The videos basically cover, you know, goal setting, the products we would use. I talks about some of our favorite things. I also give you like pre-printed tabs if you don't have a label maker, and we clearly, you know, we're not leaving our houses right now, but if you already have the tabs, you can print them. There's some pre-printed, ready to go things there that you just have to print. There's also a shopping list if you wanted to go online and purchase those items. All of the links to all the products that we would use when we're organizing an office are included in that. Can't say enough. We talk extensively about the record retention guideline, which is really the most important thing to understand when you're keeping and creating filing systems. I talk a little bit about creating document trees, which goes with what Marietta was saying earlier, that once you have a good filing system on paper, you can mirror pretty much everything we talked about into your digital electronic files, and then they match the exact same, so your brain doesn't have to learn two different systems. But creating a document tree that really resonates with you and your paperwork, it's really important in any case, either way. What else we talk about? There's a lot of show and tell. I literally show you every single piece of paper that would go into my monthly file, like in details. That's all I got. So can I repeat the discount code? Yes, the discount code is FFT. So it's like Free Friday Training, short for FFT 2020. And you can find that if you go on our website. So we're organizingmaniacs.com. There's a tab there that says buy now. And then the one item that's there is detox your file box. And you can just click on the, I think it says sign up now. And then it will take you into a page to check out. And the discount code to get for $97 is FFT 2020. So I'm going to scroll through and see what kind of questions I didn't answer. You guys have been like rock stars here. Maybe I'll start answering the magazine question because it's a question I get a lot. Magazines are hard because, you know, I could show you, I don't know that you can see, it's hiding behind the chair over there, but I have a magazine pile that's literally this tall, right? And don't judge, but I read People magazine. I subscribe to People magazine. I don't read it. And recently my friend Dylan was here, and I gave her a stack like this. I was like, just take them. Just take it. I'm not going to read them. It's whatever. I don't care what happened to the Royals. I'm just moving on. But magazines are hard because we have this ingrained belief that we're actually going to read all of this stuff. And guess what? Next week, some more come. And then the week after, some more come. And then at some point, you just have to purge. At one point, I used to rip out the articles and believe that I was going to read those. But we're in times when there's more published in 1 minute right? Than like the entire year before the internet got here. And that's like, don't quote me on those statistics, but like, as you imagine, there are more YouTubes uploaded every second than like their babies being born, right? There's like tremendous amount of information now in the world. And for me to think that I would go back and read those articles, it's not very realistic. So I tend to just like, you know, and right now, currently I have my Entrepreneur magazine sitting on the kitchen counter. So as I'm waiting for my tea to boil, or if I am like, you know, just kind of on hold for some, so I page through it and I see if there's any articles that I want to read. And the majority of the time, I don't get through more than a little bit of blurbs of anything. So at some point, you just have to get rid of that stuff. That is just my personal opinion. However, I help clients set up really elaborate systems to keep those things too. But I just find that most people never go back to it. There are ways that you can keep them digitally. You can create binders. There are all sorts of things that you can do. But my recommendation is at some point, just let it go. I was really sad about a year ago where I just got rid of all of my Real Simple magazines because I was like, am I ever going to go search for any of this stuff in there? And the answer is no. I would much more likely go find something on Pinterest or on YouTube or find some of these things electronically. So I hope that answers your question. I'm very biased on magazines. We talked about bill paying, magazines. My opinion on memorabilia is as follows. I have a thing in my office that you may have seen some of my videos that has like all of the lovely notes that people write to me. It's like one of those photo holders with like little ribbons. And I just, whenever somebody writes me a lovely card and it really touches my heart, I stick it in there. I have a box upstairs on my 3rd floor with all of the things that I love that, you know, my nieces and nephews have made for me, or like my family holiday cards that they mail to me, or like my friends, you know, some of my friends have, you know, everybody now sends photo cards. I can't remember, like maybe last year, I think I got one regular card. Everybody was photo cards. So I keep some of those, but I have let's just say it's a bin, and I just stick that stuff in there because those things are meaningful to me. I have also, I realized that we have a mixed understanding what paperwork clutter is and what is meaningful history is. And I am also trying to like separate the two, right? Our memorabilia is not paper clutter. Our memorabilia has meaning to us. They have meaning to our children. They have meaning. They are going to have meaning in 100 years. I was just recently working with a client. She's like, all of this is junk. And I was like, and I said, well, is it really junk? Or like, is this something that your grandchildren would be interested in knowing about you when you're no longer here with us? And so we also need to think about like, what is the long-term impact of these things and how are they going to be valued by the people that come after we do, right? Because it's like, it's very short-sighted for us to think about some of these things as like, what is the value today without thinking about the future? You know, we are a generation we're not gonna have photos like our grandparents did. Like kids are not gonna go through boxes and be like, oh my God, look at this really, really old photo of my grandfather with his best friend sitting on the front porch. Like we may not have those records like they did. So, which is why I said that we have a whole memorabilia class where we're talking about that, because I think that we have to honor the today and we also have to honor the history. And sometimes that's like it's a very sketchy place there. I work with clients that have lots of memorabilia and they can't let go of anything. And I think that is a little too skewed to one right? So like finding a balance where you're honoring the today and how much space does it take, but also honoring the history of who you are and your family and what is that going to look like from 100 years from now is really important. And that's my soapbox on memorabilia. Any suggestions? Do I have any suggestions on how to organize things like calls made, for example, to credit card companies, utilities, that is not paper-based, but is important to keep in case it comes up later? So thanks for that question, Gabriella. Whenever I call somebody, I'm going to show you my phone bill. I write notes like in this empty space, and then I take like detailed notes. And once again, I also stick these in my monthlies. So then if I need to go find the conversation that I had with Verizon, I can see my notes, but I don't think I'm ever going to need these notes more than a year. So then I don't tend to keep it. If there are no note spaces, like my, I'm not going to show you about my credit card bill is like completely filled on the top and there's like a tiny little space on the bottom. There's no place for notes. So I probably would create an extra, I just probably rip an extra page out of my notebook. And then I either paperclip or staple it together with all the notes that I did. And I actually have some of those because I'm like currently refinancing my house. And, you know, this whole coronavirus crisis has made me call a few of like my car payments and, you know, a couple other people. So while I was talking to those people and taking notes of what we agreed on and how we're going to move forward, I took notes of who I spoke with and what was the outcome of my call. And then a couple of them I didn't have enough space, so I have a one pager that I attached to my bill, and then I stuck it in the monthly so I can, you know, review those conversations if I need to. What about notes? What about notes for current work projects that you have, and you have a number of projects you're working on and you want to work on? So I have a lot of clients that I coach either virtually, or I have a few businesses that I consult with virtually as well. So whenever I work with those companies, depending on what kind of notes I'm taking, I do two things with it. One, I type the notes up and then I have it in my notes section, and then I create a one pager. So I file, save as, and then I save those notes into my file with that client. So all my notes are basically together in the same place. It does take a little bit of more time to do that. And lately I just been snapping a picture of my handwritten page. I doodle a lot to stay focused whenever I'm in phone calls with people or whenever I'm coaching people. It helps me just kind of, you know, I don't have ADHD, but doodling is a way to like, it helps me really stay in the moment with what they're saying. And it also, you know, I can write key notes on what they're saying that helps me remind me of where we're going with our coaching. So lately I just been like snapping it, and I'm using an app. I can look it up and tell you exactly what that is, because this week I feel like I found a really good one that just really works. It's called Wiz-File, W-I-Z files. And basically it's super easy to use. You just like put your phone in front of the page, you press the little green button, it scans it. It's not a perfect scan. It's more like a fax than anything, but you know what? Once again, the likelihood that I ever go back and really look at those notes is very, very small, almost like non-existent ever. But I have it. So, and then I attach those files to my clients' folders, which I have it organized digitally. And then if I ever need the notes, they're there. Sometimes I share my notes with clients, not very often at all. Once again, because I scribble a lot of stuff. And so I try to they probably wouldn't understand anything I said anyway. So that's how kind of I manage projects. Marie says she likes Genius Scan. I never used that, but that sounds like a really good app too. One more, thank you. What about basic account passwords for bills? It's a really good question. I've been using LastPass for the last 2 years. And for a long time, I have to say, I was one of those, you know, conspiracy theorists, or like, I'm not giving anyone all my passwords. But LastPass has changed my life in so many ways. And I love those people. And in economic downturns, when you have to cut back, they are now one of them. I absolutely love LastPass. And it's basically stores everything into your system. I'm using a Mac, so it speaks between my computer and my iPhone and any other device that I have that is Mac related. It's very safe whenever I log in from any place outside of my house. Even if I go to the local coffee shop, it asks me if it's me and it makes me confirm that's my identity. It made me create a password that it wasn't ridiculously hard to remember. So it was really helpful to have that. And as a matter of fact, in the past, I have used the password for my Wi-Fi. Shouldn't tell that out loud, because it's a combination of words and letters that it sounds like a sing song to me. So I can easily remember what that is. You know, it's like skipping 6:45, sun 1:23, and rain, right? So it's like the whole thing is like, it's like a little story. So it's super easy to remember. So that works really well for me. So that is my favorite thing. LastPass. It's my online people. We talked about Genius Scan. Thanks, Len. Thanks. I'm glad that it affirmed a lot of what I've been doing. So several new ideas. I love that. I love when you go to a training and you're like, hey, I'm doing the right thing already. Way to go to me. So I'm glad that was helpful to you. Jenny said, can these scans go into an editable file such as a Word file? Not that I know of. I think and I don't know if Marie has a take on Genius Scan. My Whiz Scan is basically a PDF file, so there's not much you can do to that. But once again, I'm like, would I go and edit these things? No, I don't think so. When I want it to be editable, then I type the basic notes, and sometimes I just establish that from the beginning that I'm going to need them to be somewhat editable. So then I just type them either in my notes or in a Word file. So then I know that I can edit them later. Sometimes you have to pre-plan. What is the name of the app to take pictures of your notes? It's called Whiz Files. Isn't that what I said? Sorry, I have to look it up because I just literally started using it like 3 days ago. Whiz Scan, WIZSCAN, Whiz Scan. It has like a little green background with like a little piece of paper and a little photo on it. Those guys. I think it's, I also should say it's free for so many scans, and then you have to probably give them some money at some point. Should make sense. What is, you can crop the photo. And so Marie said in Genius, is that Genius Scan? Genius Scan, you also cannot edit. It's just, it just crops and then it goes into a PDF file, which I think a lot of these scanning, unless you pay like good money to Adobe. I know Adobe has a scannable app that then becomes editable, but then you probably have to give them some money for that. All right. People saying goodbye. Thanks for coming. It's good to see you. Snip them into PowerPoint, put a text box. Okay, so here's a suggestion of what to do with your scannable photos. So snip them into a PowerPoint, put in a text box if you need to add text, and then you resave it as a PDF. Thank you so much for that suggestion. Okay, well, I think I covered all of the questions. God, you guys are rock stars. Oh, wait, there's some more. Where in the house is the best place to sort? That is a really good question. I would try to find a space where your paperwork may not need to be disturbed. And, you know, these times we're all working from home with a lot of people. There's a lot of moving around. So one thing I do like to do that I didn't talk about is I like to take a sticky note where the sticky is on the bottom and then the flappy side is on the top. So I peel the sticky note, I write whatever title it is. So if I was doing a pile with like taxes, I would write taxes. Then you can stick the note side and then you can use that as a tab. So if you had to stick, just pile all your paperwork for a while you while you take a break or while you're have to spend the weekend with people or whatever you have to clean up the area, then you can just stack and unstack your paperwork as needed, and it makes it a little bit easier to see what you can and cannot do, to see where you are in your project. I got distracted by reading before I finished my thought. Hope that does that answer your question? Where in the house to sort your filing? I can't find WizScan. I don't know what to tell you. I just really, let's see, let me search it. I know it was there because I've been using it. WizScan. Oh, I'm on airplane mode. That's not helpful. Okay, what I'll do is, so I don't take time here, I will add the link to the email I'm going to send to you with the record retention guideline. I will send you a link to the WizScan, so that way you'll have it. I'm going to do some, you're welcome, you're welcome. WizCam seems to be only available for iOS, not, okay. So here's the trick. It's not available for your Droid people. So Pam suggested Cam Scanner, C-A-M Scanner. That should work. You should be on house mode, LOL. You guys, this was a lot of fun. So I hope maybe you'll come back next Friday. I'm thinking I might just do memorabilia on Friday because that's a training that's already ready to go. And then we can plan week 3 on something else. So I really enjoyed being with you. Thank you so much for letting me share my knowledge and my love. And I hope that this was helpful to all of you so you can go and start getting your paperwork organized. And, you know, I'm always here for you. I'm grateful to be part of your life. And I'm praying that everybody stay healthy and home and paperwork free. So lots of love to all of you. And I will see you next Friday. Bye.